Thank you to everyone for joining us online live today for our final Digital Health Tech Thursday series of the season. Presented by CSE and KASCorp, we are pleased to have three companies joining us today. Myself and Jason will be your moderators. We have Tahir Janmohamed, founder and CEO of ManagingLife; Sachin Aggarwal, CEO, Think Research; and Hugh Rogers, CEO and Director of XPhyto, also listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange, which is the only plug I will be doing. As mentioned, your moderators are myself and Jason Baibokas from KASCorp. Welcome to this new platform. It's called AirMeet. We find this very interactive. And if for some reason you lose connectivity, please just click on refresh. I wouldn't fiddle around with too many buttons as we work through the newness together. We aim to run about 45 minutes. The chat board and the question board on the right-hand side should be utilized for some serious questions. We encourage everybody to interact, ask questions. Just specify who the question is directed to. Please note that this presentation is for information purposes only. It's not to be used as a solicitation to make an investment for either shares or debt or buy and sell stock. CSE, Jason, myself, as your session host, we make no representation about any of these companies. If you are interested in the investor pitch, please connect with the companies directly in order to get detailed information. Each company will have 7 minutes to present their PowerPoint. When you see my face or Jason's appear, that means the company has about 20 seconds to wrap up. After all the presentations are done, we will host a Q&A session. Again, we encourage our audience to participate. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host and co-organizer, Jason.
Thanks, Barrington. Can't believe we're at the sixth and final session already, but it's been whirlwind. I think we're up to, this will be through 18 companies. And anybody who's new to the platform, Jason Baibokas, I am founder of a firm called KASCorp, and we try to partner with entrepreneurs and look for innovative ways to kind of help them grow their business through leveraging our expertise and access to capital. And what we saw in the health tech space was a big dislocation happening in the marketplace and a big knowledge gap in terms of investors. So we decided to partner with the CSE to put on this set of events, and it's unfortunate we're down to the last one now, but we may be back with more later on. So today's presenters, I'd like to start off with our first presenter, Tahir Janmohamed. He is founder and CEO of ManagingLife, which is basically a pain management platform. He's very passionate about improving healthcare through digital and mobile innovation. Prior to starting this, he was at IBM as a management consultant for 8 years, and he is a professional engineer with a computer engineering degree from the University of Toronto and an MBA also from the Rotman School of Management at U of T. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tahir.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you to CSC and KASCorp for inviting me here today. Hopefully you're able to see my screen and that it worked. All right, so I'd love to spend some time sharing a little bit more about what we do here at ManagingLife. As Jason mentioned, we are a digital health company based here in Toronto that's entirely focused on helping people with chronic pain. So chronic pain is pain that lasts longer than 6 months. It's your back pain, it's your neck pain, it's your fibromyalgia, it's your arthritis. We've helped over 50,000 people so far, and as a result of the pandemic, we've had significant an increase in our users, almost 100% year over year. Our solution is licensed by 8 different hospitals across North America, including UHN here in Toronto. And it's also been licensed by 2 insurance companies, Green Shield Canada, as well as RBC Insurance. Now, before I get into a little bit more detail about what our platform does, I do want to just take a step back and talk about chronic pain as a problem. It's surprisingly one of the biggest drivers of healthcare expenditures from a chronic disease perspective. It affects 20% of the population, and it costs more than heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. For employers, it's the #1 reason employees take time off work due to medical illness after the common cold. People with chronic pain tend to go to the doctor more, use more medication, use more services. In fact, someone with chronic pain costs 50% more than someone without chronic pain. But I think the biggest opportunity for us as a company, and where we've seen real ROI and support in terms of where we're able to drive value, is on disability. About 30 to 40% of your typical disability portfolio is due to chronic pain conditions. In fact, just under $7 billion is paid out every year to people in chronic pain on disability. Now, part of the reason chronic pain costs so much is because there are some unique challenges associated for people who have chronic pain, as well as the clinicians who try to treat them. It's often comorbid with anxiety, depression. About 50 to 70% of people with chronic pain can benefit from psychological therapy. The difference, however, is that you can't tell someone with pain, I'm going to treat your pain with psychology. They'd be offended or insulted. Are you calling me crazy? Are you saying my pain's in my head? And so it's very difficult to get them the support that they need because of this. It's also very hard to explain what you're going through. My mom has severe fibromyalgia, so I can speak to this firsthand. I grew up with her telling her doctors and my dad, you just don't get what I'm going through. And unfortunately, many times with people with chronic pain tend to become dependent on opioids to treat it. Now, on the flip side, for clinicians, it's very hard to tell what's working and what's not. There is no objective measure for pain. And once someone leaves the clinic, many times with an opioid prescription, there's no visibility into how they're doing until the next time they come back for a clinical visit. And then finally, when it comes to self-management, many different chronic conditions like diabetes and mental health have solutions that allow people to self-manage their condition. But when it comes to chronic pain, there's a huge gap in the market, and one that we're hoping to fill. Now, this right here is the gold standard when you measure pain. You go to any pain clinic across North America, they're going to ask you to fill out one of these. Draw on the little body where it hurts, rate your pain from 0 to 10. And the challenge is when you go to a doctor and they ask you to fill out one of these, they use this information to make a clinical treatment decision. Should I prescribe more opioids? Should I refer you out for surgery? And it's imperfect and very difficult to understand. I spent 8 years as a management consultant with IBM, and one of the things we used to say is you can't manage what you can't measure or monitor. We were talking about systems back then, but that's very true for the world of pain. So our solution brings objectivity to the measurement of pain. This is an actual report that comes out of our solution. We create a single-page, highly visual, and more objective measurement into not only pain, but also function and medication use. Now, our solution is called Manage My Pain, and we bring together 3 components to connect patients with their doctors and case managers. There's an app for people to record what they feel on a regular basis, and we play back that information through charts and graphs to highlight patterns and trends. Kind of like the Fitbit for pain. Is my migraine getting worse when it's cloudy outside, or is that cannabis helping me sleep? They then take this information and generate these reports that becomes their voice when they go to their doctors. And then finally, what's very unique to our platform is a monitoring portal that allows clinics or case managers to proactively see how people are doing. And because we have so many users and so much data, this is where we've put in advanced analytics to actually flag at-risk behaviors weeks, months sooner than ever possible before. In fact, the Toronto General Hospital is using that monitoring portal with all of its post-surgical pain patients who receive major surgeries at the Toronto General Hospital, with the goal of weaning them off their opioids within 6 months after surgery. Now, we work with 8 different hospitals I've mentioned, and what's really important for us as a company is to actually prove that our solution is not just some tech company that's developing these solutions. We validate everything that we build through research studies that are published in peer-reviewed journals. We have over 10 such publications. And in fact, the most recent is, I think, one of our biggest milestones as a company. After a 2.5-year study led by UHN and funded by the government of Ontario, our solution was used at 3 different sites, chronic pain sites, where the researchers compared the use of our solution in people who receive standard of care against people that just receive standard of care. And they found statistical and clinically significant improvements. Now, why that's important for us is because that makes our solution the world's first digital solution for generalized chronic pain that has validated clinical evidence. The only other solutions out there are focused on back pain or a specific condition. And then finally, the other thing that we published recently was in December of last year was our case study with RBC Insurance, who have been using our platform for over 2 years with disability clients. And according to that case study and what we were able to finally share with the world is that people who used our solution on disability actually had shorter claim durations, 7.5 months shorter, according to RBC's data. That represents approximately $20,000 to $20,000 saves. So just to conclude, our solution helps people with chronic pain, but the way that we've actually developed it is based on clinical evidence, and we've validated both in the clinical context as well as with our business partners who ultimately use it. I'm happy to discuss more with anyone who is interested in learning more about our company, and I will pass it back over to Jason.
Great. That's a great overview. Appreciate that. Our next speaker, good friend of mine, Sachin Aggarwal, who is CEO of Think Research. Company recently went public. He is very passionate about healthcare, understands healthcare systems around the world, and understands that they're on the brink of profound and necessary change. Scientific knowledge, clinical best practices, and medical data are increasing at an exponential rate, and that's contributing to a global knowledge crisis that has implications for clinicians, patients, governments, and countries at large. Think Research is tackling that problem, and I'll let Sachin get into how that's being addressed.
Awesome. I'm assuming folks can see my screen. There we go. Tahir, nice presentation. I love what you do. That's great. Jason, thank you for the intro. I'll try to zip through this. Think Research, we are a venture listed company. Our mission is to organize the world's health knowledge so everyone gets the best care. So if you think about the whole healthcare space, what do? We get evidence and knowledge to the bedside. We change the practice of clinicians to make sure they're practicing up-to-date medicine, improve the standard and quality of care, and ideally control the cost and make sure that there's no waste within care. So why do we do that? We do it because it's getting really hard for doctors to keep up, right? 20 years ago, a doctor had to think about what are the major changes in guidelines, what are the major changes in evidence. The doctor was the king of the castle. Everything was in their head, right? Fast forward 20 years. In the age of COVID, I think what we've learned is that the emperor has no clothes, right? You can't keep up. You can't keep up on your own. And with a single condition, one condition, COVID, that was in the news every single day, our health systems and our care providers still couldn't keep up, right? And this is a problem that's getting worse. If we can't keep up on one condition, what about the thousands that we've got to keep in mind? Right. And so what's happening is our providers are practicing out-of-date medicine, and it's costing our patients their health, and it's costing our healthcare system and our payers a huge amount of money. The OECD estimates that 20% of all healthcare spend globally is waste as a consequence. Right. It's a really, really big problem. So what do? We get knowledge to the bedside. Evidence is generated. The evidence needs to be taught and trained. The evidence is then baked into decision support tools that are used at the point of care. It's deployed across health systems, right? The data is collected and warehoused, and then the data is used to contribute to new clinical research. This is the flywheel of knowledge, right? And this is our business. So on a combined basis, this is pro forma 2020, we're about 36 million in revenue, and with 60% gross margins. We're in about 2,800 facilities around the world, most of those in Canada, but an increasing number in the US, and now with green shoots in other places around the world with privacy compliant clouds across 5 continents. So we would think of ourselves as in terms of knowledge translation companies, we're the biggest here in Canada, and we're now using that footprint to be able to grow into other places around the world. Our solutions roughly map to that knowledge lifecycle, clinical knowledge and getting knowledge to the bedside, connectivity. This relates to moving patient data and storing patient data. And then we actually have our own clinical services division to be able to deploy best practices and build a brand based on those best practices. So roughly this is how our solutions divide up in terms of those different sectors. 24 million and 6 million in the first two categories, and these categories are software as a service. And then our clinical services division, which is relatively new, is in the $10 million ballpark. These are all run rates, so these are higher than last year's pro formas. As a part of our business, we just last week announced the acquisition of MD Briefcase. MD Briefcase is Canada's largest and one of the world's largest providers of continuing medical education. They've got 280,000 clinicians, doctors, nurses, and pharmacists that use their solutions to obtain their continuing medical education credits. So we're really pleased by this particular acquisition. Really bolsters our business, and we're very, very excited about it. In terms of where we head from here, in addition to organic growth, we are a very acquisitive company, and we're looking to acquire additional companies that fall within our core service areas. And so this is knowledge-based solutions that get evidence to the bedside and affect the standard or quality of care. Number two is those companies that actually deliver best practice care out to patients. So those are a small network of clinical services that will be used to showcase our solutions. Number three is companies that are in the data supply chain, warehousing data, structuring data, and so on and so forth, that are in the data supply chain specifically for patients are going to be of interest to us. And lastly is clinical research organizations that use the data to generate new evidence and complete that flywheel. And again, as to why the knowledge-based part of healthcare and why now, this is a big and growing market. And our view is that, our thesis is that 10 years from now, every doctor will be machine-aided in some way, right? And if you believe that, then you believe that that the market here is very large. Of the $10 trillion healthcare market globally, $7 trillion of that is labor. And if you do a cost replacement or a cost optimization on that labor of even 10 to 20%, you're talking about a $1 trillion opportunity in the knowledge-based part of healthcare. So we think this is where the ball game is, and we're very excited about that. So I won't go into the comps. You can look those up yourselves, but I'll pass it back to Jason and look forward to chatting further.
That's great, Sachin. Thanks. Obviously a huge problem to tackle, and I've got a ton of questions, so can't wait for the panel to get into that. Our next speaker is Hugh Rogers. He is CEO and director of XPhyto. Rogers is an entrepreneur and lawyer by background, with a private and public market startup experience in a range of different industries and operating roles. Recently, he's been doing a lot of work focused on public listings, corporate restructurings, particularly in the life sciences space, where you're looking at cell therapy and medical devices. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Hugh.
Thanks so much, Jason. I appreciate the chance to be here, and thank you also to the CSE. So XPhyto Therapeutics was founded several years ago, myself and a financial partner, looking at opportunities to invest in an accelerator or incubator model at what we felt would be explosive growth opportunities. And we focused on platform technologies, technologies we could scale, and technologies that were extremely timely. We've made several acquisitions, most of them in Germany, acquired a world-class drug delivery company with major pharmaceutical clients, focused on transdermal, sublingual drug delivery technology. We have a pipeline, a number of products, in fact, announced today a clinical trial schedule for this year. We've also moved forward to acquire land for construction of a commercial production facility. We also have an exclusive partnership in the diagnostic space, point of care testing for infectious disease, which includes COVID-19 product expected to receive CE mark approval in Europe in the next 30 days. And also working on API production and some drug delivery opportunities in certain emerging drug classes such as psychedelics. So we are highly diversified. We've become certainly an acceleration or incubator model, and always looking for new opportunities and to stay ahead of the curve. So we have deep expertise in drug delivery. The Drug Development Center at the University of Alberta, as well as several partnerships with leading institutions in Germany. We have operations. We have approximately 30 employees in Germany, most of whom are science focused, and looking to really for 2021 to be a transformative year. We have a number of products coming to market, into production, into revenue, and then driving certain other programs forward. So let me jump onto my shared screen here. So as I mentioned, XPhyto Therapeutics, CSE listed, XPHY, and our corporate mission is really to innovate and commercialize next generation opportunities. So this for us is point of care diagnostics, drug delivery, and new active pharmaceutical ingredients. I think the core of our business, and you can see the structure here, really three verticals at the moment. Vector Pharma being a German-based drug delivery company. We acquired them about a year and a half ago. They have proprietary technology for the production of thin film drug delivery systems. So that includes transdermal and sublingual strip or wafer technology. We have both our own proprietary products. We work in the generic, hybrid generic space, and the rationale behind that is accelerated commercialization. So we're not taking products or new, let's say, novel compounds or formulas through the FDA approval process, for example. We're focused on generic opportunities, generic formulas, and hybrid generic formulas with approved APIs that are accelerated to market. So, always looking for advantages in terms of leverage and scalability, but accelerated opportunities in terms of commercialization. 3A Diagnostics, our German partner as well, has a portfolio of biosensor products in the infectious disease space, as well as PCR products for COVID-19 that we expect to be on the market very soon. It's a very, it's a cutting edge product, a single thermal cycle, thermal mediated PCR in 20 minutes, fluidics platform with detection in 5 minutes. It's designed for point of care use. So this is a distributable, portable system, does not require RNA extraction, which is significant. So significantly reduced equipment and technical requirements. And then XPhyto Laboratories focused on psychedelic and cannabinoid production. So we have several agreements right now working on biotechnology production of psilocybin using genetically modified microorganisms. We also expect to soon announce several other programs for API production. Our psychedelic program is focused on one API production, as well as incorporation of certain compounds into our Vector Pharma drug delivery systems. And then finally, rolling those out into clinical counseling models, and expect some news on that in the coming days. But I think in terms of what we offer, and really the core of our business is drug delivery, and it ties into some of our, even our diagnostics business, where our biosensor portfolio is actually delivered using our sublingual or ODF platform. So it's a way to add synergies between our different verticals. Psychedelics tie in through the drug delivery, the biosensor also through our drug delivery, and Vector Pharma itself has a number of programs underway right now. We expect to carry out at least one pilot study per quarter this year, pending successful results. Each one of those will go to a final pivotal study, all based in Europe, and focused on high growth opportunities, new APIs, neurological indications, and again, generic and hybrid generic drug formulation. So this is expedited commercialization. And as I mentioned, a platform technology with scalable development and scalable commercial opportunities. So that's really the core of XPhyto, and I think I'll wrap it up there, Jason.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, Hugh. And normally I ask all our presenters to come back to the stage, but we're all here. So thank you once again for our presenters for that. We now turn this over to the Inquisition. This is where we get to and where you get to ask questions about the presentations, about the the presenters, their companies, all of those things. I know Jason has a couple that he wanted to bring forth. So without further ado, Jason, you can lead us off.
Sure. Well, the old saying goes, man plans and God laughs. So we definitely had that last year with the pandemic hitting. So I'd really love to hear from all the speakers, what were the biggest things that you didn't anticipate, with the pandemic hitting, and what were some of the biggest opportunities that came out of that as well? And maybe we'll start with Hugh and go through all the panel.
Sure. So I mean, the pandemic obviously has affected us all. I think in terms of our business, to be honest, it's been an advantage having made an investment in the infectious disease screening space. It was a pretty simple transition to focus on COVID-19. So that's obviously been very positive for our business. And as that product comes to market, we expect the testing market to actually continue to grow significantly for COVID-19 into the foreseeable future, particularly in international airports, border control, transportation industry. It does appear that PCR is the gold standard and will be into the foreseeable future. So it's great to be in that space. Admittedly, there's been logistical challenges in other areas of our business, such as clinical trial planning for our other products. But on the whole, I think it's certainly being in the life science space across the board. I think we would all attest to an extreme amount of attention being paid to the life science industry. So I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Maybe Sachin?
Yeah, it's that attention that Hugh talks about, which has resulted in in our view, what is the biggest impact across healthcare, which is a reduced cost of capital, right? There are negatives in terms of sales slowing down, or enterprise buyers shifting their focus, but in the grand scheme of things, 2020 has resulted in a real shift in the cost of capital for healthcare companies, right? And as a result, the things that we can do are much broader and bigger than what we could do a year or two ago in terms of growing our businesses, I think. Beyond that, COVID really shone a spotlight on what the healthcare system is capable of and not capable of. So I think it's accelerated some trends, and anything related to best practices, the speed at which knowledge gets out to the bedside, and then some tactical things like telemedicine, and that's here to stay. Virtualized medicine. Tracking patients using apps and so on and so forth. Those are serious here to stay trends.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think prior to the pandemic, I remember seeing some statistics in Kaiser Permanente system, something like over 50% of the visits there were already virtual pre-pandemic. But those numbers were single digits here in Canada. The pandemic has forced that to change. And so what we've seen because we deal with chronic pain patients and chronic pain clinics, is they had no choice but to change the way that they operate. You can't issue those paper-based questionnaires. You can't have your face-to-face visits anymore. And so, as Sachin mentioned, it's accelerated what was already going to happen, but it's kind of pushed it forward by at least 3 years. Almost every single pain clinic has to look for a remote monitoring solution and a way to capture this information that they used to collect face-to-face or via paper. And so they're playing catch-up, I think, right now. And it's been fantastic for digital health companies because this was the future, and we always thought that it would be, but now we're getting the acknowledgement from both patients as well as clinicians.
Oh, that's great. And then just more of a question for Tahir and then for Sachin, just in terms of utility of your platforms or utilization of your platforms and engagement, what are you seeing on that front? And are there any technologies out there that you see that could be, some physical technology or some other thing that you can embed into your offering to increase engagement and increase usage? An example would be, a fitness or wellness app. You have a device. We had a company on that basically did a respiratory quotient measurement where you breathe in and out of the device, and that definitely increases engagement. It becomes a habit that somebody uses on a daily basis. So thinking along those lines, especially on the pain management side, and then on the stuff that you're doing at Think.
Yeah. So, our solutions are targeted mostly at the clinicians themselves, right? So the extent to which we want to, so overall across all segments, usage is up in 2020, 2021. The place where it's down is some enterprise segments where business lines are closed because of COVID. So, hospitals that have shut down elective surgeries or parts of their businesses, of course, those parts are down from a usage perspective. For us, it's not, the way to drive up usage is create trust. Number one, right? Number two, easy access. So integration, APIs, single sign-on, so on and so forth. That just reduces the tax of getting into the solution. And then number three is it's creating a little bit of a feedback loop with care providers, because if you give them data, data about their own practice, data about their peers and what they're practicing, those sorts of things make a big difference, because in a paper practice or even in the EMR world, they really don't get data on what's happening around them. They can't compare themselves to their peers and so on and so forth. So you actually, by making their experience more rich, you make your solutions more sticky.
And our solution is a little bit different in that even though we do have clinicians using our platform, our focus is on patients. And so we actually, for the first 5 years, I didn't even talk to a clinician. I talked to people with chronic pain. I tried to figure out what their needs were, what their desires were, what their motivations were. We designed our product entirely with user engagement as our primary metric. We wanted to make sure that people actually used it, because a lot of digital health companies go to doctors, researchers, and ask them what they need. But in our world, that didn't really work. Only after we proved that people with pain got value and were engaged in our platform, then we went to the clinics and we said, how can you use the data we are already capturing to help you make clinical decisions better? What's the format that you want it presented in? And all the things that Sachin just mentioned, making it ease of use, integration. But for us, that came secondary, because unless the patients are willing to use it, it doesn't matter how easy it is to use, because there's nothing feeding into the system. That was kind of our approach to it.
Okay.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Of course.
This question is directed pretty much for Hugh, and before I go into it, it's kind of reminiscent about Y2K and how this date was coming, and we had to prepare, at least from a technological standpoint, of what might happen, and it actually helped us as a society move forward at a huge pace. Y2K was different because we could see that coming, but when it came to COVID, that even though we were heading in that direction, it definitely accelerated the process. I wanted Hugh and XPhyto on because as part of this Digital Health Tech Thursdays, there's many parts to this ecosystem, and one is what XPhyto does. So, Hugh, specifically, when your company is looking to choose or select other companies to incubate, support, help, what do you look for? And I think the phrase you used was innovation to impact.
Thanks, Barrington. And that's right. We're always looking for an impact from our investment. I think ultimately we're looking for scalable platforms. And I think this ties in, as Sachin and Tahir mentioned, the scalability of digital technology. That's very important in terms of monetization and generating value for your shareholders. And when we're making an investment, it's not only impact, but I think largely platform-based impact. So when we purchased Vector Pharma, we bought 2 drug delivery platforms, and that can be scaled almost infinitely. We have 4 programs underway with another 15 right behind it. When we did our diagnostics deal, they had a portfolio. We had about 8 biosensors, everything from H1N1, H5N1, all the way to periimplantitis and oral dental health applications. So in terms of leveraging our dollar, it's really generating impact, maximizing that impact, and acquiring scalable technology. I think that's where I would put it, and I think that ties in certainly with digital models in terms of being able to roll out, what our Sachin and Tahir are working on.
Thanks for that, Hugh. I have one final question, sort of for the panelists, and I'm not sure if Jason has a few more. An audience, you know what? Actually, I think I saw something in the chat. No, I didn't. So a lot of the things that we address during these series have talked about the positive and the benefits, and we all know that there's a flip side to it. I'm not sure what it is, but in this direction that we're going, in this direction that we're headed, which I believe overall is a positive, what are some of the things to watch out for, or some of the looming concerns? And I, not just as an investor, but or in the capital market space, but as a patient, as a clinician, I was wondering. Feel free to answer. Somebody just jump in.
Yeah, I'll answer it from an investor and a company perspective. We all have to be careful not to overstretch or overreach. Cost of capital right now is lower than it's ever been. That's great. That's great for us. But we've got to be careful to shepherd that. We don't know how long this is going to last. My guess is it's going to last a lot longer than we think it is. That being said, we've got to be mindful that all things go in cycles, and so we should be careful and prepare ourselves for even a more bumpy ride in the future.
I have a different perspective as well. I think what I've seen just personally, a lot of companies are taking advantage of the fantastic momentum in digital health, and a lot of companies are getting opportunities that they never had before, but without necessarily the appropriate validation behind it. And so my only warning is demand proof. There's a lot of claims. A lot of claims are being made without evidence, essentially. I mean, we saw that many times in the early days of the cannabis industry, and we're seeing that many times in the mental health industry now. And I think investors should definitely look at the underlying evidence and data, because it's one thing if the company is making a claim, it's another thing if independent peer-reviewed research are showing the same types of improvements. So that's my perspective.
I think obviously the trends in terms of digital health is a big one with diagnostics, point of care. I think low cost point of care screening. And again, these need to be, evidence-based testing. So I think look for, we're focused on institutional clients for our PCR product. I think there's been a lot of questionable evidence around, let's say, antigen tests in terms of how they hold up in the clinic. I think it is important to look at data. But at a high level, I think point-of-care testing is certainly something we're focused on. And obviously digital health is a major trend that I think is, no sign of slowing down anytime soon. That's for sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, no, I had a question. Given it is, and those are all great perspectives. Given it is Mental Health Day, there's the self-management kind of with a counselor aspect to things that digital can help with, and then you've got the medical side of things where you've got other more organized therapies or actual therapeutics that are being delivered. And kind of the whole spectrum of responses into that area. So with all these different therapies, it's really what's a consumer to do to kind of really figure out what's best for them and start to vector in where should they come in, what's the right point of entry, should they be trying psilocybin or some of these other therapeutics, or should they just be focusing on counselors? There's a lot of information and misinformation out there. So what's a good place, in your opinion, Paul, to start?
I can maybe comment on that. I think you mentioned psilocybin, which is obviously a hot topic, and that's an industry we're participating in. But when you look at government registered clinical trials, there's 160 of them right now. So it's a very crowded space. And I think some companies are claiming to be in phase 1 or phase 2 when they're not even registered in a clinical trial program. So I think you have to be very careful. I would look for partnerships with recognized institutions. So if they're not working with, a leader from the academic field or an industry partner, I think people are right to be skeptical of that. And that would be my suggestion. If you're trying to operate in a new emerging and let's say explosive industry, I think look for the partnerships, who they've surrounded themselves with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And as a consumer looking for support, I think the government has tried to help identify some of these solutions that have that underlying evidence and partnerships. I know Ontario has offered certain services free of charge, such as Mind Beacon for people across the province. I think there are some solutions out there that are purely digital that are a good starting point that can help you explore other ways if and when it's needed. But jumping straight to your own therapy, it might not be the best first answer. It should be talking to someone, acknowledging that there's a problem, seeking support from either a digital tool or a person on the other end that can help guide you down the appropriate path. Don't make those decisions independently of a qualified professional or tool.
This is sort of the final frontier in healthcare, right? This is the hardest part. It's the hardest part to standardize. The understanding and working of the brain is, we're infantile in terms of where this is heading, right? And all of us are different. So I think the answer is that we don't really have an answer for you. You trial and error, and this is really a personal thing, right? And someone else's answer is not going to be your answer. You should explore, try, read a great deal, but dip your toe in multiple different parts of the market, multiple different options to determine what you think is working for you. And really, I think that's the only way you're going to get there.
That's
Barrington. I was just going to say, I think we're running short on time, so I was going to turn it over to Barrington anyhow.
Yeah, and on that note, to use a little bit of capital markets talk, diversify your own personal health portfolio. Diversify. So first of all, thank you to our audience. You've been with us since December the 4th. It's now the end of January. Thank you to our speakers, Tahir Janmohamed from Managing Life, Sachin Aggarwal, CEO of Think Research, and Hugh Rogers, CEO and Director of XPhyto, listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Big thank you to Jason. This started out as a simple conversation. And again, let's talk. You never know what's going to come out of it. but this was early on, and he put the seed in saying, listen, I think we can do this. And here we are almost 2 months later. We're going to take a pause for a little bit, but I have a feeling this or some iteration of Digital Health Tech Thursdays will be back. I'd like to thank KASCorp and the Canadian Securities Exchange for allowing us and giving us this platform. As well, we couldn't do this. We're front-facing, but there's someone behind the scenes making this all work, and her name's Grace Pedota from the Canadian Securities Exchange. Thank you, Grace. Make sure you tune in to CSE and subscribe to CSE TV. It's available on YouTube, as well as the regular social media outlets of LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Subscribe. Check us out. Check out the content. We have lots of other health tech shows from Thursdays, as well as our Tech Tuesdays, and a variety of specialized programs investing in psychedelics for those who are interested. Yeah, let's don't forget what today is. It's about talking. It's about having a conversation. And with that, I want to say thank you. I've been your host, Barrington Miller from the Canadian Securities Exchange.